Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radical Respect podcast. I am Kim Scott.
And I'm Wesley Faulkner, her co-host. And today we have another guest for you, a friend of mine, Espree. We've known each other for over a decade, been in the same tech circles, same events, especially South by Southwest. So I'm really happy to bring your expertise as a fellow podcaster to this podcast. Kim, could you read Espree's bio, please?
So Espree, for those of you who don't know her, although she needs no introduction because probably you all do, is the girl who gets it done. She has been a podcaster since 2013, so since the olden days. Espree is a force in the LA tech scene. She's the founder of WeAreLATech. And she has been championing women in tech globally. She's also a founding member of the Audio Collective. She's one of the earliest people on Clubhouse. She has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Harper's Bazaar, and lots more. She met Wesley at South by Southwest, and she calls podcasting painting audio. Welcome, Espree. I'm excited to paint some audio with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah. And you also were a Clubhouse icon.
So I was a Clubhouse icon.
Yes,
That's
you
so
were.
Funny. So many people are like, "You seem familiar." I'm like, "Gosh, I'm not going to say it." You've just seen me on your phone when you open your app a million times.
It's amazing. Well, Espree, when we were talking before we started recording, you said something that really resonated for me. You said that early in your career, you found yourself in these places and you didn't even know to be afraid because you hadn't heard all the stories. And I have often thought the same thing. Early in my career, I raised money in Silicon Valley. I went from some venture capitalists here. And I had no idea that it was unusual for a woman to be a founder or to raise money.
100%.
And it was useful. So I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear your stories about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of young founders come to me and they tell me they first of all, they disqualify themselves with their age. They say, well, I'm only XYZ age. And I think that's such a shame because I think one of my superpowers in my career was how naive I used to be.
Yeah.
And with an earlier age, when you haven't experienced life so much, then the only thing that's possible in that moment in time is your imagination. And everything in your imagination can absolutely be executed on. And then as we go through life and we hear the no's and the yeses and the rules and the this and that, we start to adopt them as though they're truths, but they're not actually truths, but we start to believe them to be. And then that changes our actions because our thought processes about the world, how we see it, changes, and not necessarily always for the better. And so early in my journey, when I didn't know what a venture capitalist was, and I didn't know that you needed to know anything. I didn't know anything about anything, and I had no relationships, but I knew about business because my dad was an early adopter in technology. I loved tech. He also took me to a lot of motocross and skateboarding and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, I know what would be really cool. I'm going to build a website where you can be in sports and connect with people around the world. And I didn't. And it was not easy to do something like this at the time, but I didn't even think about easy or hard. I've always aligned with the word artist. I've never felt, I felt like a founder when I learned the term founder, but I feel that I've always just been a creative, lost in my daydreams. And so it wasn't, is this possible or not possible? It was like, this is my art, and now I'm going to go figure out how to make my art. Where do I go buy the paints? Where do I go buy the brushes? What colors do I want? It's never been, oh my gosh, there's no way I could build a website. I don't even know if I knew what a website was. It was just like, here's the creative vision I have. Let me go figure out how to do this thing. And so part of that creative vision was I read, there was this website called YouTube, and there were these people called Sequoia Capital, and they invested in YouTube. And I saw Sequoia Capital had also invested in all these other companies that I really looked up to at the time, like Cafe Press. And I don't remember, but at the time it was like really cool companies. I was like, man, I want to be a part of that club. I guess I'm going to just fly to San Francisco and go meet with these Sequoia people. They're working with everybody else, and it seemed to work out for YouTube. And if YouTube could do it, so can I. And so first, I read the website and I created a business plan based on everything that I read off of the website. Now, this business plan, mind you, I did it with my boyfriend's mom at the time. She was totally supportive of this cause, and I built this construction paper press kit. I have a high school journalism background, and
So this was physical. This was like a physical
press kit with a business plan that I learned how to, or learned, that's the loose creative version of the word, but off of their website. And then I emailed everyone on the website that I authentically felt I resonated with. So anybody that I didn't energetically feel connected to from their website bios, I did not email. Now, all of the emails, nobody wrote back. And I was like, oh, well, and I bought the plane ticket, asked a friend if I could stay at their house in San Francisco, flew to San Francisco, borrowed my friend's car, drove to Silicon Valley. I'm in the parking lot, feeling like I am out of my mind. I'm sweating, like profusely sweating, feeling like I'm a crazy person.
So you're in the Sequoia, you're like on Sand Hill Road in the Sequoia parking lot.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was crazy. And I remember calling my business partner at the time, my co-founder. He's like, who kept his job, his like, stable 9-to-5 job. Meanwhile, I'm risking it all. He's like, you got to do it for us, because I felt like, what am I doing? I should leave. Like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I go in, and there's this one guy's name that was just resonating in my mind. It just like, it kept going in my mind. So I walked in and I go to this receptionist. I'm like, is so-and-so in? The person whose name from the website bios. And she said, is he expecting you? I said, well, I sent the email, which was true. Like, and then he came out and met with me. And then that one meeting led to my first mentor, Nicola, who was amazing, who taught me how to actually do things in venture capital world, which led to a meeting with 50 investors, and it just goes on. And then as I'm on the plane, like flying back there, the guy sitting next to me, I guess he was like in the venture capital world, which at this point I still don't really understand. I don't know that I just met with the top venture capitalists in the world. I'm just creating. And this guy in the plane is like, like, oh, you need to know someone to get a meeting there. And I was like, I just have a meeting, and then one of my best friends who was in business school, she's like, do you understand? That's like meeting with Michael Jordan. Do you get what you just did? And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just like doing my thing over here. And so I really, at that time, I didn't understand what a venture capitalist was. I didn't understand. I probably didn't understand anything about business. I was just creating, and I continue to create. And I think the more knowledgeable I have gotten over time, the more it's actually held me back in so many ways, because the entire world was in access to me and possible when I didn't understand what wasn't possible. And the truth is, we still don't really know what is or isn't possible. We just have developed all sorts of narratives, and those narratives, at least in my storyline, hold me back. And so my biggest passion that I'm most excited about at this particular chapter in my life is trying to remove my narratives as much as possible so that I could create the life that I want to live.
Yeah. So go ahead, Wesley.
I was going to say that one of the things that make humans different from other creatures is that we can learn by having passed on knowledge without experiencing it ourselves. And so one of the ways that we do that is through stories, narratives, basically their playbooks or their templates that get passed on through people. And so we try to follow those because that's what we've been told, because that's what we learned and that's how we acquired that knowledge. But the issue with frameworks is that They don't always work, and they don't always work in the same circumstances.
Yeah.
And being able to break out of those frameworks allows you to have the creativity of doing things that maybe weren't told is the right way, or
Yeah.
weren't told is the way that is the proper way. But still, it's either not explored, or it was explored once and failed once. It doesn't, or failed 1,000 times.
Totally.
But that doesn't mean 1,001 or 1,002 that it will fail again. So understanding where the playbooks really make sense, and where you are able to take an, let's say, artistic,
Totally.
what do you call it?
License.
In literature, license. Yes, thank you. The author is able to correct me. Thanks.
I want to share one more story, because I think it's so important, because what we're talking about is we're talking about creation. And I think the most successful thing when it comes to quote unquote playbooks that any of us can do is to continually share the story of our journey. That is the best growth hack ever. And to give you an example, I just produced 6 events for LA Tech Week. And in producing, and it was a lot of work. And, you know, a lot of people say, how do you get sponsors? How do you not get sponsors? And they'll give you a playbook. Here's how you go get sponsors. And then that playbook sometimes doesn't work. Or in a case like mine, I waited too long, and it was the week before my events. And now I'm like, I post my journey on my social networks, in this case, LinkedIn. Someone saw it, and that ended up leading to sponsorship for my events, because someone within my network saw my journey that I had posted. That person knew someone that was the right fit. And then that company that ended up sponsoring was beyond elated to work with me and wants to continue working with me, because they were blown away by the results that I produced at the events. The point is, that was not in a playbook. It was simply sharing a journey. The playbook failed me. The playbook isn't actually a playbook. We just want the security and confidence, as though out there is one right way to do things, but there's only your right way to do things. And it's about truly discovering ourselves, whether we're a morning person or a night person, whether we like to eat veggies or we like to eat something else. We all are our own individuals. And that's the beauty of it, is that we're like, all this whole life is our artwork. Like how we live our life is a work of art.
Yes. I love that. I love that. You said something a moment ago that I want to ask you more about. You said, you know, the part of your journey that you're most excited about right now is how you're overcoming those self-limiting stories.
Yeah.
So what are you, I would love to know more about that. What are you doing now that you've got the stories in your head? How are you getting them back out of your head?
Yeah, I am so over being in my own way. Mm-hmm. There are certain things that I've very much wanted for myself for several years now, including I accidentally came across this voice memo I created in October of 2016, and I listened to it, and I that girl could have totally been the same me today, saying the same things. And I'm like, enough is enough. Why have I self-created my own Groundhog's Day? Like, enough is enough. Like, when am I going to overcome myself? And so this is total serendipity, but I'm a part of this community. I went to this event that they had going on with this performance coach. I was not looking for a coach. I actually don't in general believe in coaches, because I think most of the coaching industry, not all, but a lot of it is what's it called? Shill, like scams.
People are making stuff up.
Yeah. And so the word coach doesn't resonate with me. I ended up, but the word performance does. But anyway, I ended up going there because the timing was right. It was serendipity. I experienced this person's work. His name is Ben Smith. And I'm like, who are you? The thing that really hit me was I walked in a little bit grumpy and a little agitated, as I do when I've been a a person of service for so many years, and feeling a level of resentment that I'm not being refueled and not being great at setting my boundaries, which is continuing to drain me. So then I show up in life resentful and agitated, right? But I'm not, but I feel like these things are serving me because it's keeping me safe and protected from people taking even more. So I show up into the space with this stranger who I have no idea who he is. And in this place, nobody's trying to hurt me or out to get me, but I show up as I'm showing up. And he has no problem that I showed up as I needed to authentically that day. He didn't give me any issue. He didn't make me feel unwelcome. He didn't make me feel any more. He just let me be whatever I needed to be. And I was like, this guy is different. Like usually somebody would try to get you to smile or whatever it is, you know? Anyway, so we do a breath session through breath work, and his specialty is nervous system regulation. I'd never heard of this before, but the term really resonated with me. I'm like, yeah, my nervous system feels out of whack. So we did a bunch of breath work. It was amazing. It was really profound. I like started crying in the breath work. And then at the end of the session, I was like, really appreciate how sincere you are. We go up to do the second part of the group regulation practice. And he, before everybody, the whole group got there, he looks to me, he says, Espree, you know, there's a world in which you can be nourished too, right? I just start crying. I was like, I don't know who you are, and you seem very expensive. So I don't know if I can do it, but like, I need to work with you. Like, I don't know what this is, but this, whatever this is,
what you need.
It's what I need. And I've been working with him a bit over 4 months now, and it's amazing. I'd say there's so many things. It's the thing I love talking about the most, but the one thing that I think is the hardest and most powerful thing that he continues to do for me, and he continues to hold for me, is he sits in the discomfort with me. So he has, I like to use the word courage. I don't think he'd use that word. Maybe he'd use the word confidence. I'm not sure. But he doesn't care whether I'm angry at him or uncomfortable by him. Like, all he cares about is that he's serving me to his best ability so that I can make it to the other side, like overcoming myself. Yeah. So when he calls out the root of my challenges, whether it's holding on to the closed offness because it keeps me safe or whatever it may be, and then I might get agitated or angry at him, like, you know, because my whole regulation is like, I need this to be safe. What are you doing challenging me? And he just sits in it and doesn't try. He doesn't care whether I like him or don't like him. He knows that he's giving me exactly what I need to get to the other side. And he, again, the word I use is courage. He has the courage to sit in it with me and not make it about him. And then I'm able to discover how I'm holding myself back. And I'm like, oh, and it might be days where I'm agitated and angry with him until I learn the lesson. And then I'm able to apply it. And I'm like, oh, that's how I've been getting in my way. That's where I'm not setting the boundary. Like one time, I'll give you an example, and then I want to make sure to take a pause. This was so funny. So I was taking action on all these little steps he was telling me. I got so angry after this session. I was taking action on all these steps he was telling me. And I was like so proud of myself. And I put all these phone icons on my phone of like spreadsheets and all this stuff, all related to all the lessons, right? I go to the session and I'm pretty much like, look how great I am. I did the spreadsheet and I have the phone icons and He's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? I did all the things. And he goes, did you do them for me or for you? And I got so angry. He's like, how you're showing up here, is this how you're showing up when you live your life day to day? Are you living your life to serve yourself, or are you trying to appease the people around you or try to prove your worth to the people around you? You're already worthy. You don't have to prove anything to me. You don't have to do this for me. Are you doing this for you or for me? And I was angry. I was angry for days until I got it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. That is profound.
Yeah. So.
Such a good story.
Yeah. I've been in several situations where I've had conversations with people who are venting, and they told me I have to turn this in tomorrow by 5:00 and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, is that a problem? Yeah, I'd need more time. Well, did you ask for more time? Well, no.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know that they wouldn't have given it to you? Well, I mean, sometimes if you don't make your needs known, the other person doesn't know that you have those needs.
Yeah.
And so the resentment is almost like wanting them to be a mind reader, wanting them to understand where you come from, but you never presented the facts or the information to allow them to even give the chances to deny it. And that
100% agree.
self-denial is kind of what you're saying in terms of how you can hold yourself back, because then the resentment is externalized instead of internalized.
Mhm.
And that kind of like what power or what part did you play in that interaction that allowed the outcome to happen? And could you have influenced it? Maybe, possibly. Did you do what you could have done to change it? I don't know. So doing that like mental audit about not only how you feel, but why you feel that way, where it comes from, and understanding that what you're feeling is more regret
Yeah.
of things you haven't, that you chose to do and chose not to do, and realizing that it was a choice. And that's the thing that people let go of, is that it was a choice.
Yeah.
And being able to understand that there was a choice that you made, which sometimes you can choose not to do, but sometimes you understand that you choose to do it, and just knowing that it is a choice that's in your power.
Yeah.
But I think Espree, part of what he was getting, I mean, tell me if I'm right about this. I think part of what your coach Ben was getting at is that often we want to please others around us more than we want to please ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And it's only when you do things for yourself that you
Yeah.
do your best work, I think. Is
Yeah.
that
Well,
part of
yeah.
what he was getting
Well,
at too?
one of my things that I am proactively working on is this feeling like, am I good enough? Like, am I worthy enough to be loved? Like,
Yes.
and so it's this constant need to prove myself. He had me read this book called The Courage to Be Disliked. I don't
Mhm.
know if you're familiar. And in the book it talks about what um our identity is essentially um being a person of value in the world. And so it's like this fine line between just being a person of value, just believing in my own value versus like trying to prove I'm worth being loved. Look at me,
Yeah.
I'm worth it. Like
Yeah.
this chasing, like
Yeah.
friction filled, like
Yeah.
anxiety versus just I am a person of value, period. And when we believe we're a person of value and show up with like a calm ease, we can be a person of value in ways that feel authentic and are within our boundaries and are energizing for us versus self-sacrificing or like compromising our own needs or not even being mindful, Wesley, as you said, of our own needs because we're trying to like prove our worth or chase love.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's part of what radical respect is about. And Wesley and I have talked a lot about this. Is there's two definitions of respect, which is very confusing. One of them is like, I have to earn your respect as a writer by writing a good book. But
Yeah.
that is not the definition that I'm talking about with radical respect. It's the second definition, which is really the unconditional regard that we owe each other. And if I don't have that unconditional regard for myself, it's very hard for me to have it for others.
So true.
And that I think that's the ultimate self-limiting story, is like, I am worthless.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
uh and it's interesting, the journey you're talking about. Like, at first you're unaware that other people might think that of you, and so it becomes easier to walk in the door. And then when you become aware that they might think of that of you, it's harder to walk in the door. And I will also say, I mean, my very first job I got by walking in the door. uh
Right.
but I was talking to a man, a black man, about the same situation. He really wanted to work at the World Bank, and he walked in the lobby to get the job, and the security guard pulled a gun on him. Like, that did not happen to me. That was not a self-limiting belief that he had. That really happened to him. And so I think it's one of the things that I really wrestled with as I was writing Radical Respect is that for much of my career, I feel like I was kind of in denial about the things that were happening to me, and even more in denial about that kind of thing happening to other people that never would have happened to, I shouldn't say never, but probably would not happen to me.
But also, wouldn't it be a shame if that gentleman thought that would happen to him every time he walked into any building, so he would just simply never try again?
Yes, and I mean, I'll put it this way. I think it's important. I think it's important not to allow self-limiting beliefs to prevent us from trying things. And I think it's important. I was talking to a young guy recently, and he said to me, I'm tired of feeling sexually suspect. And I said, I can imagine that's hard to feel sexually suspect, but let me talk to you about what it's like to be a woman going into a conference of 100 men. I'm going to that conference because I want to get to know those men. Like, I like men. I like a world of men. But I know, and I have to know this in the back of my mind, I have to know that one of those 100 men is a serial rapist. Statistically, that is a fact. And if I don't know, if I don't know that, like, I don't want to treat all the other 99 men who are not, and who never would, and who are wonderful, upstanding people. I don't want to treat all of them like serial rapists, uh, obviously, because I'm not going to get along very well at the conference. But I also don't want to get raped at the conference, and so I need to be aware that that's a possibility, and I need to build solidarity with other men who are going to help me identify, who are going to be upstanders,
I get that. When I was at the grocery store the other day, I asked a security guard to walk me to my car.
Yeah. So I think that the man I was talking to needed to, in order to survive in the world, he needed to be aware that might happen to him if he just walked in. And that's kind of how, how things can compound. So I agree. You don't want to let self-limiting stories get in the way, but you also don't want to be in denial. And what I was saying is, when I was writing this book, I was sort of hesitant to start writing Radical Respect because I felt like, my denial, or maybe it was willful ignorance, was in many ways an asset for me early in my career. I was like, la 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 la, just go for it. And then I started thinking more about it, and I thought, you know what, like, at this point in my life, I'm 57 now, or when I started writing the book, I was 50. It's time for me to come out of denial in order to help other people, in order to help older, younger people, but also people who have different lived experiences than I do. And so, yes, you don't want to, you do want to overcome the self-limiting stories, and you also don't want to be in denial. And that was hard for me to hold in my head at the same time.
I got to say that it sounds, information, knowing the information is an advantage. Having an understanding of what is at stake and what your risk tolerance and profile is important. I think sometimes, like what you're saying, Espree, is that sometimes the risk profile is over exaggerated from some of these stories to the consequences or the negative interaction could be, in your case, you don't get the meeting when you show up to the office. And if you knew that, and I'm sure you did, that you might be denied the meeting and it might not happen, and that saying, like, I can do that risk profile. Someone might think I'm odd or weird just showing up and then not getting the meeting. And you're like, I can weigh those two and just realize the downside's not that bad. Let's go ahead and do that. Yes, think I'm weird, but fine. I'm willing to take that risk. And some people take that impression, that value that other people assign to them, saying like, oh, that person's odd, that person's weird, that person's doing something that's just like out of line, and way amping that up about how bad of a downside is. When you say you didn't have sponsors and you posted it on LinkedIn, the downside is like someone thinks that, oh, you were unsuccessful or this was a problem. But the upside is there are a world of people who would be interested in that spot. There would be a world of people who are learning from what you're putting out there and is assigning value to that and thus to you. And so that they don't really make that calculation with the right values and the right weights for them to make that calculated risk.
Right.
And having an ignorance of some of the downside could allow you to make that, because your calculations are off and you'll still do it. But having more information and putting it more in context still allows you to do that, but just in a way that making sure that the context of like the downside may just be negligible and just not amping it up so much.
I think also part of what I love about working with you, Wesley, and what you've said, Espree, is that like positive target identification is so important. Like being very aware of the upside. Like you had something you wanted to create. And so you weren't going to let anything get in your way of creating it. And sharing those stories, sharing the positive stories is really important, because we can achieve more than we think we can very often.
And I think it's also what I've been learning in this journey with my performance coach is sitting in the discomfort. It's really hard to sit in the discomfort. At least it has been for me. And I didn't even know this was hard for me before working with him. And for example, a few weeks ago, I had something happen. And so I wanted an emergency session. And he said, look, I'm happy to show up for you, but do you want this session because you need the session or because you're uncomfortable in the discomfort? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm uncomfortable in the discomfort. And
Yeah.
so I didn't have the session because I realized this was an opportunity for me to sit in the discomfort. And as I've been practicing this more and more, and it's extremely difficult, I see how I hold myself back because I don't want to be uncomfortable. And I mean uncomfortable in the most G-rated way. So that day I met with the venture capital firm years ago. That day I sat in the discomfort and I didn't let it hold me back. I was sweating. I felt weird, a lot of anxiety, didn't know what I was doing. Absolutely level 20,000 uncomfortable.
Yeah, I bet.
And I just walked into that building anyway. And so what's so different now that I can't sit in the discomfort a little bit in order to make it to the other side and then maybe possibly get that meeting or whatever it is that I'm after at this point in my life. And so so on a daily basis, when I'm starting to feel a little bit like I need candy or like I want to check out to YouTube videos or whatever it may be, it's like, is there a breath I can do to regulate? Can I go take a walk? Can I drink a glass of water? What are the options I have to live more intentionally so that I'm regulated and that I could ease my own discomfort?
I deal with a lot of public speakers, like people who get on stage.
Public speaking is so anxiety producing.
Yes. And also I do a lot of public speaking. So I've met a lot of people who are doing it for the first time. And I tell them, your bar for success is completion. What you want to do is just finish. I know a lot of people are like trying to knock it out of the park and trying to make sure they hit every point in their speaker notes or all this stuff. I said, your bar is completion. As long as you don't jump off the stage in the middle of your talk and you finish and you get all to the end, that's victory, right? It'll get easier. You'll get more comfortable, but just focus on finishing. And that's something that, and then they've made it that far, but some people don't even want to submit a talk. Some people submit a talk, get it accepted, and choose to deny it because they like, oh, I shouldn't be there, or I'm not allowed to, or I won't be able to do that. And they're getting in their heads, and they are comparing themselves to ideals. Someone who's been speaking for 10 years, someone who's been on a TED stage, not calling anyone out on this podcast specifically. And they just try to compare themselves to that. I was like, and that also messes up their risk matrix, their calculations.
100%.
And I have to kind of like bring them home and just saying, all you got to do is finish, and then you're good.
I love that you said that. Do you know how many women over the 10 plus years I've been doing the Women in Tech podcast have said, I'm not good enough, or my accent's too strong, or something?
Yeah.
These are women who have had their companies acquired. These are women who are top level executives. My mom says, like, essentially, never close a door on yourself. Like, if someone doesn't want you on their stage, let them decide. Like, don't decide for
That's their
them.
job. That's their job,
like,
not yours.
If I think that you're a great guest for the podcast, why are you telling me that I don't know my own show and you're not like, I'm smart. Like, so I think, like, Wesley, I love that you said that, like, and really lean into it, because I think each and every one of us, including me, we need to hear it again and again. Don't close our own doors of opportunity. Walk through the door. You don't even need to say yes if it doesn't feel right later, but at least open the door, explore the pathway, see if it's the right fit for you.
Espree, I love that. And I think that is your mic drop moment. Don't close the door on yourself. I love that. That is the ultimate way to find agency through self-limiting beliefs.
Yes. And if people wanted to find you online, where can they find you, Espree?
I'm at Espree Devora everywhere. So on X/Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on everything. And my email is espree@hey.com. So it's just ESP.
Ooh, email address.
REE@HEY.com.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone. Be well.